Hi everyone, a really busy weekend of news coming out of the UK with regards to the need to self-isolate on return from Spain now. Also an update to the FCO travel advice. It came whilst we were away for the weekend in Sevilla, so I wanted to also talk about our first experience of flying again post-lockdown with Ryanair. So I'm going to sit down, give you my thoughts on all of these things. What does it mean for the island? And what does it mean if you were planning on travelling anytime soon? We flew with Ryanair. We'd had these flights booked for several months in advance, and we checked the numbers in Andalusia in the south prior to travelling to Seville, and we were very comfortable with what we saw. Certainly no spikes there at the moment, like they're experiencing in the north, in Aragon and Catalonia. So we had no qualms about travelling. When we got to the airport, we noticed that there were actually 4 or 5 flights within about an hour and a half of each other, so the airport did feel reasonably busy. The check-in experience and the security experience, to be honest, was no different to any other flight. The only change there was that they'd installed some stickers on the floor to maintain a 1 metre distance between people in the queue. But once we'd passed through security and got upstairs, we noticed that the duty-free shop was open. But it was about 7:30 in the morning by this point, and there wasn't anywhere else open within the airport, so we needed to use the vending machines for any drinks and snacks. And it wasn't until about 8 a.m. when one of the cafes opened. Now, if you've ever travelled with Ryanair before, you'll know that when the boarding gate is announced, there's usually a mad scramble and everybody dashes to the boarding gate to queue up. And this seems to be because Ryanair sell what they call priority boarding. And obviously it's not priority boarding at all, it's just a ticket to get into one queue versus another, and it means that you can keep your hand luggage on board with you rather than having to pay to check a bag in. So this did mean that it wasn't really possible to socially distance at the gate. When I went over to have a look, there was a lot of people congregating there. We chose to hang back, and we actually boarded the plane right towards the end. Now this actually ended up being an advantage for us because we hadn't pre-booked any seats. We don't tend to with Ryanair. It does mean that we are aware of their policy to split people up, and when we checked in on Thursday morning, that's what they'd done. So we were 6 rows apart with the seats that we'd been allocated. Now, I must admit, I was hoping that in the middle of a pandemic that Ryanair might have changed that policy, because it just makes no sense to me that they would sit you next to a complete stranger if they could have you sat next to the person that you're actually travelling with. So a PR opportunity completely lost on Ryanair, and again they've favoured the option to actually try and rake in a few extra quid on seat sales. So if you are travelling soon with Ryanair and you want to guarantee that you're sat next to the person that you're going with, you might want to pre-book a seat to make sure that you're not split up. The flight itself, I have to say, wasn't hugely different either to any other flight we've been on. Obviously there's a requirement to wear a mask on board, and everybody that we saw was complying with that without any issues. You are allowed to briefly remove it to eat or drink. But we didn't see anybody that kept the mask off for any prolonged period of time, and there wasn't really any movement up or down the plane and people going to chat to friends or relatives either, which you sometimes do see on flights. The toilet situation, the seatbelt sign was on for the whole flight. On the way out, the front toilet was locked, and there were 2 toilets at the back of the plane that you could use. There was a message saying that you needed to use the call bell, but we found that nobody was doing that. They were just checking that there wasn't a queue, and provided there wasn't, people were free to go and use the toilet when they wanted to, and the cabin crew seemed fine with that. On the way back, the front toilet was open, so there was all 3 toilets available to use, which probably made things a little bit easier. When we arrived into Sevilla, because we were on a domestic flight and travelling within the Schengen zone, there's no requirement to go through passport control, and there's also no requirement to fill out a locator form because those only apply to international arrivals. I did think that we might be subject to a temperature screening, but that wasn't the case either. We just passed straight through into the baggage claim area. That experience was different on the return flight, so it does seem at least as if the islands have got slightly stricter protocols in place for all incoming flights. Every person is temperature screened here in Fuerteventura regardless of where you've travelled from. But again, we didn't need to fill out any paperwork. I did notice here in Fuerteventura that there were two what appeared to be medical professionals with laptops. So I believe if you fail the temperature screening, there is then a secondary screening that's carried out. So it does seem that they're trying to do their best, at least, with some sort of screening process in place for all incoming passengers here. Now, obviously the UK news with regards to the 14-day self-isolation, this came in out of nowhere on the weekend. We were actually in a bar in Sevilla on Saturday night when I started getting a few messages through saying that this was coming into force. And it was confusing at first. At first, people weren't sure if it applied to the islands or if it was just the mainland. The FCO guidance was updated that said that the islands were safe to travel to. And then on Monday morning that was changed, and all of a sudden the UK was saying that the islands weren't safe. There was discussions seemingly going on between Madrid and London to talk about a travel corridor between the UK and the islands, and it just seems as if that went nowhere, and the UK then have lumped everybody in together and said that the whole of Spain is now considered high risk. And this, is just really frustrating. There's no scientific data at all to say that the islands are a high risk. In fact, the numbers here, I think it's 5.8 cases per 100,000 of population, which is 3 times fewer incidents than the UK currently. So, I think it's fair to say that here on the islands it seems safer than the UK is at present. Why they would say that it's not safe for people to come here is beyond me. The work that the islands have done, not least us being subjected to a very severe lockdown where we pretty much couldn't do anything, to then imposing stricter regulations for businesses to reopen and then to reintroduce tourism, obviously in the safest way possible. All of that hard work now has just been undone seemingly overnight with this decision. And the island is really going to suffer with this. I don't think it's overstating it to say that this could be the final nail in the coffin for some businesses here. Certainly there's going to be bars and restaurants that won't survive this news. If they're in a tourist area with predominantly UK customers, there's going to be next to nobody here for them to serve. So having gone several months with no trade at all, and then their costs have increased to reopen safely, this just doesn't seem like a viable position for them to be in. And I really feel for anybody here with a business now with this news. Really not good. And let's face it, it's not good for sections of the UK economy either. There's hundreds of thousands of people employed within tourism providers, whether that's airlines, travel agents. The knock-on effect of this decision is much, much bigger than just the islands here. And it could take several months or years now for this to actually go full circle and it be in a better position. I don't know how long this advice will last. It does seem as if this travel corridor is off the table now, and they want to put the whole of Spain together. I suspect part of this decision is that they want to drive money through the UK economy and promote staycations for the rest of the summer. It does seem as if package holidays have now been cancelled into the early part of August. Flights will still operate. But at least the FCO advice being updated means that anybody on a package holiday should now be entitled to a refund, or at the very least a voucher, or to be able to change the dates. If you're on a flight only option, that flight will still operate by the looks of it, so EasyJet, Ryanair are still going to come here. Is it safe to travel to the islands? Well, the situation here is no different. It's not suddenly not safe. Based on a few days, the situation's actually improved if you look at the numbers here. A couple of days ago we were at 7 cases within the community who were all in home isolation. As of yesterday that was reduced down to 4 with some recoveries. We don't have anybody in hospital here, and we haven't had a single death either, so you have to say the numbers don't justify this decision, and certainly it does seem safer here than the UK at the moment. So I certainly feel safe being here. I would say it would be safe, provided you're willing to follow the rules that are in place to travel. But with the FCO advice now, your travel insurance will be invalidated. So you need to really be careful about that if you are planning on travel, that you have got some means of insuring yourself. There does seem to be 1 or 2 companies that are willing to offer policies despite the FCO advice. I've not looked into them in any detail, but one of them is called Battleface, I believe, so you can Google that if that applies to you. Yeah, I don't know when this will be lifted. It seems that it's sort of like a moving thing, which again is not great if you're a holiday maker, because it's pretty much impossible now to have any confidence in booking a holiday. The rules seemingly can change at the drop of a hat. There'll be people that were already out here that were told on Saturday night that they're now subject to a 14-day isolation period, which they hadn't factored in when they travelled out here. And obviously, you know, flights can be cancelled. Hotels may choose not to reopen that were planning on opening. You know, I think that will probably be the case with some of them. So just do your research on your accommodation if you are planning on travelling. Make sure you've got adequate insurance. But, you know, my message is probably the same, that day-to-day life here hasn't changed, whether you're a resident or a holiday maker. You know, the risk factor seems about the same. Everybody has to take precautions wherever they are. But we're certainly, I wouldn't say, a high-risk area, which is what the FCO website is now saying. Yeah, if you're affected by this, I'm really sorry. I hope you can at least get refunds sorted, dates changed, and when you do have the chance to come back, to come and support the businesses here that are going to struggle as a result of this news. If you're interested in what our experience was like in Sevilla, Andalusia has very strict rules on masks, quite different to the Canaries. I did do a vlog of our experience. I also did a hotel review as well to show you what it's like to stay in a hotel in the current circumstances. I'll edit both of those later this week and look to put them on over the weekend or the early part of next week, so keep an eye out for those. In the meantime, stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again soon.